Hi everyone, it's Miss Brenner. I hope you're all doing well and staying happy and healthy. I'm here with your Week 11 agenda. We're going to be looking at some expectations. For this module, students are still going to be talking about literary lenses and talking about the horror genre. We are also going to be moving into dystopian literature, so we're going to be starting off with some notes about that this week. As far as students are going to know the different literary terms that we have covered already. So that's going to include foreshadowing, literary lenses, monster types, and we will start to learn about dystopian literature as well. Students will be able to identify characters based on plot moments, reference characters by name, identify and analyze characters with bias and empathy, and use lenses to analyze text. As far as for the literary pieces, the essential questions that we are going to be covering this week are: how can literary elements be analyzed through a specific lens to create meaning? How can characters be broken down to fit a deeper and more complex purpose? And how does the author create suspense, and why does this frighten us as a reader, since we will be concluding our horror unit this week? Alrighty, so as we were looking in week 11, you will see that here's the submission for your creative writing. That is due on the 12th at 8 a.m. So just so you are aware, I am opening this week early, so you'll be able to see week 11 open on the 31st of March. But technically, this is for weeks. Week 11 is for April 5th through the 12th of April. So just be aware of that. These assignments are not due till the 12th of April at 8 a.m. So once again, first activity is your submission discussion for your creative writing assignment. Then we have our Dystopian Society notes, Dystopian Society 1, Dystopian Society 2, and then the note worksheet for that looks like this. You must watch the Edpuzzles and complete the note sheet. We will be using these notes quite frequently throughout the reading of Brave New World, which will be starting in week 12. So please make sure that you complete this dystopian worksheet for parts 1 and 2, so that way we can reference this as we read a variety of different short stories and we read Brave New World. Then we have our Wednesday creative writing. For week 11, your writing prompts are to write a story about someone posting a video on social media that goes viral. One day the sun rose in the west and set in the east. Write a story about someone who's going from home and constantly getting distracted by their pet. Working from home. And then write a story about someone who finds a magical portal in their house. Also, if you are not interested in any of those writing prompts, you could always participate in the weekly writing competition at this website listed here, and then copy and paste your writing prompt from the competition. Alrighty. Activity number 3, you have a variety of different options this week as far as what you want to read. You technically have 4 different options, one's kind of a combo. So, first off, we have Abraham's Boys. This is a horror story that is fairly graphic. If you do not like gore and you do not like graphic violence, this is not a story for you. If that interests you, it is a very well-written short story, and it definitely plays into our monster types. But once again, please be forewarned, this is not for somebody that is not comfortable with graphic descriptions, that is not comfortable with violent actions, and is not comfortable with some graphic language. So if that makes you uncomfortable, do not read this story. That is why it is an option, but it is not a requirement. The next we have is the April Witch, which is the next option. This story is a much more light-hearted option. It plays more into fantasy than it does into horror. It still fits within the monster genre, but it is less graphic. It is really no adult language whatsoever. It's by Ray Bradbury. It's an enjoyable, comfortable read. Home Delivery by Stephen King is a horror story, but as far as his horror stories go, it does not have as much graphic tendencies to it. There is one scene that is somewhat graphic, but it has to do with zombies, so I feel like it's a lot more lighthearted from that viewpoint. If you like The Walking Dead, but maybe with a little less obvious violence, this might be for you. Now, if you do not like the horror genre, once again, April Witch is a great one if you're not a fan of the horror genre, but Dark They Were and Golden Eyed is also a great option if you do not like the horror genre. It still has monsters in it, but it is not nearly as graphic as Home Delivery or Abraham's Boys. So, as far as Dark They Were and Golden Eyed, this is your combo option. You would be reading There Will Come Soft Rains by Ray Bradbury first, which is kind of like the prelogue to what is going to come in the story. It gives you an idea as far as what's happening on Earth at the time. And then Dark They Were and Golden Eyed is what's happening in outer space at the same time period as There Will Come Soft Rains. So if you like science fiction, you like aliens and conquest and outer space activities, then Dark They Were and Golden Eyed is definitely up your alley. It really is not graphic or overly violent. It doesn't contain adult language, I'm 90% sure. So if that is something that you are interested in, outer space activities, then I would highly recommend Dark They Were and Golden Eyed. You will be completing the week 11 worksheet with your reading option. There we go. So as you can see, we have our 4 options at the top. You're going to highlight whichever one you want to read. If you have any kind of qualms with any of the options, please contact me. We can find you another option, but I feel like we have a pretty good variety here. I gave you the page numbers for part 1 that you should be reading. We're talking about the setting, the what if scenario, so we're going back to that Stephen King Ed puzzle and talking a little bit about the what if scenario. So the what if scenario is pretty much the idea that you should come up with the plot line prior to writing your story. That's how Stephen King creates all of his pieces of fiction. He says, what if we put a killer clown in a small town and saw how it would wreak havoc on a group of small children? Pretty much the what if scenario for it. So we are just looking for the what if scenario in our short story of selection. So then I'm asking you to chart characters that you see. I give you only 2 boxes. Please add more rows as you need them. And then I gave you the example as to what I am looking for when you are looking for the character's name, personality, and relationship, and the impact that they have on the story. Then we have a foreshadowing chart. I'm just asking for 5 different things that help you to make predictions as to what you think is going to happen next in the story and what impact you think it's going to have on you as a reader. If you choose to read Dark They Were and Golden Eyed, this is a chart specifically for that story. If you choose to read any of the other options, you do not need to do this portion. But if you read Dark They Were and Golden Eyed, I'm asking you to make connections between There Will Come Soft Rains, which is prior to Dark They Were and Golden Eyed. They are taking place in different locations, but around the same time period. So for part 2, it's a continuation, so you are finishing up your story of choice. You are completing a literary lens chart for your story of choice. We are talking about the similarities and differences between the writing styles. So if you are reading a Stephen King story, because there are 2 that are listed, I would recommend that you compare them to Graveyard Shift and Gray Matter. If you are reading one that is not, by all means, compare it to Stephen King's, because Abraham Boys is written by his son. So if you have any interest in Abraham's Boys, I think it makes great comparisons to his father's writing style, even it being a little bit more dramatic. So I would recommend comparing it to Stephen King. If you read a Ray Bradbury story, such as April Witch, you might want to compare it to one of the other ones that we've used in the past, which is also perfectly fine. Please just let me know what you are comparing it to. And then we are looking at overarching theme. So, for theme, just a reminder that theme is a full sentence, it is arguable, and it is about a central motif in a piece. So I mean, a motif is going to be a singular word, like love, or vengeance, or community. Motif is a central idea within a text. So if we were going to look at Children of the Corn from earlier, Maybe you would want to say community is a central motif, considering the fact that it really focuses on this idea of us versus them, the being in this together versus everybody else who is an outsider. That would be a motif. As far as a theme for that central motif, this idea of that family, even if it is not your biological family, family will stick together and support you even in the most dire of times. That would be a theme, because it is arguable. That is not always going to be true, but in the story it does seem to occur more often than not. We would then find 2 examples from the stories that we are comparing to put into these slots, and then put the titles of the 2 stories you are comparing. You're going to do that twice. So you are reading stories currently, and then you're comparing it to stories we have already read. There is a large variety of different stories that we have already read, so please feel free to select any of the ones that we have already covered. Alrighty, activity 4, we're doing dystopian notes. This is the end of our dystopian notes. I know they are quite lengthy, but it is very important that we not only talk about different forms of dystopias, the different forms of control within those worlds, and then also start talking a little bit about Brave New World itself. So part 3 is specific to talking about Brave New World and Aldous Huxley, who is the author, talking about his life, the history of Brave New World, the different historical events that take place in scientific discoveries within the story, mostly because the author expects that you have pre-established knowledge of the different historical events and the scientific discoveries. He doesn't make any references in the book to give you background, so that's what I do. We go over what all happens in history and as far as science to help prepare you for reading the novel in part 3. And then lastly, we have our silent reading discussion for week 11. I'm just asking you guys to talk about who your favorite character is in your book. If you are reading a nonfiction book like a biography, maybe tell me about why you decided to read that book and what interests you so much about that person's life. If you are reading newspaper articles, please contact me. Maybe you feel like you cannot fit this silent reading reflection, and that's okay. We just want to talk about what you are reading and why it interests you, what pulled you into that genre or that author's writing, so that way we can talk a little bit about the character development in your particular silent reading. So you are going to give me 3 examples as to why you enjoy this character so much from your current silent reading, and you're going to comment on one other student's in a netiquette appropriate manner. Alrighty, so that is all the assignments for week 11. I hope you guys have a wonderful week and a wonderful break, and I will talk to you guys again soon. Bye.